So the Patriots sit at number 4, right? Ryan Cowden, Mike Vrabel running the show. What would you expect them to do if it was still Tennessee, right? What would the playbook say they were doing? And what do you think the value of that 4th overall pick is if they trade it?
Well, they're almost working with a blank slate, right? I mean, they know they've got the quarterback in place. They've got a couple corners, but it's a roster that needs a lot of improvement, in all honesty, and it's probably going to take more than one offseason. I think ideally they'd like to get an offensive lineman there. Certainly you've got the quarterback in place. The O-line, struggled mightily throughout last season. Unfortunately for them, I'm not convinced that there's a lineman worth taking at number 4 overall. Can you trade down, get a couple more picks and take that lineman at, say, 8th or 9th overall? That might be an interesting scenario that I don't think is getting covered enough. If they do stick at number 4, do they deem one of those linemen, like a Will Campbell, worth going that highly? I personally don't think so. One scenario that I don't think is getting enough traction, because again, I see them working with a bit of a blank slate here, is the D tackle from Michigan, Mason Graham. I haven't seen him mocked enough to them at number 4. You're talking about a defensive-minded head coach in Mike Vrabel, who was, one of his best players in Tennessee was Jeffrey Simmons, a pass-rushing 3-tech. I think Mason Graham is cut from that same cloth. I think he is the third or fourth best player in this class, regardless of position, and they can certainly use a disruptive force up front. I think he's a better player than any of the offensive linemen in this class. So are they going to force O-lineman at 4? Of course, protecting Drake May is the most important thing. That's their best asset. If they go best player available approach, I think Mason Graham is very much cut from that Jeffrey Simmons, Mike Vrabel cloth.
So Mason Graham being the best player at 4, I think highly of him, but especially if they're going to go up front, right? I look at Abdul Carter. And will Abdul Carter be there at 4 is the question. I think Travis Hunter is somebody a lot of Patriots fans are interested in as well. What are your thoughts on those guys falling to 4? And what do you see the Titans doing? Because this kind of all starts with them, right?
Yeah, I'd be pretty surprised if either of those guys are available at 4. I think the Patriots are probably kicking themselves that they won that last game. They'd be number 1 if they hadn't won it. I think the Titans, people are expecting a quarterback at 1, or the conversation sort of split down the middle. I don't think they're going to take a quarterback. I think they're going to take one of those 2 players, either right at number 1, being Carter or Hunter, or through a trade down with the Giants, who are at 3 and are certainly desperate for a quarterback themselves. I mean, if you're the Patriots, I think the only way one of those guys is there at 4 is if you get 2 quarterbacks in the top 3, and that would shock me. The way I know, quarterbacks always rise to the top is the old saying, but I don't think you're getting Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders in the top 3. If you're only getting one of them, then I think the other 2 picks are a no-brainer, are going to be Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter, right? And that would occur before the Patriots come on the board. So I think, unfortunately for them, that number 3 is the sweet spot, because one quarterback maybe goes, and then you're guaranteeing yourself one of Carter or Hunter. But I'd be pretty surprised. Like, I don't see many scenarios where Carter and Hunter are there for the Patriots at number 4.
So then that leaves them with, again, the tackles. Mason Graham, Tet McMillan, I think, is in the conversation as well. You mentioned you don't see either of the tackles worthy of that 4th overall pick. Why is that? And does this go back to the conversation of maybe they're not tackles, maybe they're guards?
Yeah, I don't even know who the second one you're referring to is, to be honest with you, because there's so much nuance between.
I guess it'd be Kelvin Banks by default, but if you don't even think he's in the top 2, that would certainly be interesting.
I don't have Kelvin Banks as one of the top tackles in this class. I think Will Campbell is probably the one it starts with, but I personally see a guard on tape when I watch him. I think
when you watch Campbell,
this tackle class,
or Banks?
I'm sorry?
When you watch Campbell or Banks?
Campbell. I think Campbell's a guard personally. Okay. I think he's going to be a better fit inside than he is at tackle. And I think there's a chance where some of these other tackles rise up the board, because when you have uncertainty, then you get unpredictable results on draft day. I think the tackle from Missouri, Armand Embo, is potentially a top 10 pick. I think Josh Simmons, the tackle from Ohio State, if he doesn't tear his ACL, I think he's in the conversation for OT1, and maybe he's still in that conversation. I think he's a top 10 talent in this draft. So there's a lot of uncertainty at tackle. Like when you talk about Kelvin Banks, I think there's a chance he's a tackle, but I think he's likelier to go like 25th overall than he is to go 4th overall to New England there. So there are a lot of question marks at this tackle class, and I think you're going to get some surprises. Watch out for that Missouri kid and the Ohio State, Josh Simmons. I think they're better prospects than most are giving credit right now.
Simmons is somebody Patriots fans I know have been very interested in, but he is coming off that significant injury from last year. I think it was I don't know if the ACL too, but I think it was the kneecap issue, torn patella tendon
Yes.
as well. Have you heard anything kind of where he's at, his progress returning from that injury, and how that will impact his value?
Well, anything you're hearing right now is from his camp, and they're telling you he's on time, which of course they're going to tell you, or that he's on schedule. I mean, the combine will be big, right? We're a couple weeks away. Then you get the medical rechecks and all of that. So we'll know a lot about Josh Simmons' knee before April arrives. But as of now, I think it would probably take him out of the running for number 4 overall, for example. Now, again, this is a roster that needs a lot of TLC. The Patriots, in my opinion, you're hell bent on protecting the prized possession, which is Drake May. You trade down to like 7, 8, 9. A team like New Orleans might want to come up at 9. Maybe a team like Vegas or the Jets, all those teams potentially in the market to come up, especially if there's a quarterback on the board. Patriots can move down, get a couple extra picks. All of a sudden, you kind of, you feel better about the value, right, of taking an offensive tackle because you're taking one when you got a couple extra picks. You don't mind passing on maybe a better player, for example, like a Mason Graham, trading out of the Mason Graham spot to get more picks and get a tackle at a more appropriate number, if you will. So I just don't see there being a lineman worth taking number 4. If that's what they do it for, in all honesty, my opinion will be that they probably reached for one of them.